Minecraft recently showcased some of the new content to look forward to in their upcoming 1.22 update, Bundles of Bravery, featuring our first look at the Pale Garden, the Creaking, and of course, the bundles, which are actually available in color in the latest Snapshot at the time that I recorded this. But if it wasn't already obvious, the Minecraft community once again seems to have mixed feelings about what Mojang has shown us, with some being excited and others seeing it as another L of an update. This is kind of a running thing with Minecraft and its updates. The community begs for updates and select features. Mojang announces the next update and some of its features. The community doesn't like it. Mojang goes back to writing 2 lines of code in a single week until the next update, and then the cycle continues. For this video, I want to quickly go over what we know about the upcoming Bundles of Bravery update, state my thoughts and opinions on it, and give my rating on if it's a good update or not. After that, we'll take a deep dive into what's happened that may have caused all of these recent updates to be portrayed as poor. And to finish, we'll quickly analyze the new future of Minecraft's development and what new updates are set to look like. To start things off, the Bundles of Bravery update obviously includes the ever so anticipated bundles, which are the last feature originally announced back during the Caves and Cliffs update to be added. These have been an experimental feature for too long, that's the answer. Most likely because of the difficulties of making it easily usable for literally every playable device. The use of a keyboard and mouse, compared to the limited buttons on a controller or Nintendo Switch, also compared to the 2 or maybe 3 fingers that a mobile player can use, are all dramatically different ways people can interact with the game. So I could see how and why it might have taken a while to get the bundles functioning well for the Bedrock version of Minecraft. I'm very happy we finally get to see that these are ready to be released. I don't see why they couldn't have just released them on Java early, but it's really not a huge deal to me. I'm also very pleased that we get to dye them different colors now too. Now, some would say I'm not exactly the biggest coding brainiac, and others would say that I don't know how to code at all. To address these rumors, I'll start off by saying that they're all 100% true. And secondly, my only wish is that Mojang would allow them to be dyed in a hex code sort of fashion, similar to how leather armor is also able to be dyed, rather than just the set classic dye colors. But hey, Minecraft isn't dying anytime soon, so I wouldn't be surprised if every colored item, like bundles, shulker boxes, maybe even wool, etc., could get this hex code feature in the future. Next, the Pale Garden is the new biome to be added to the overworld, packed with ominous grayish grass and water, new moss blocks and vines, the white wood set, and of course, the Creaking. The white wood set looks absolutely phenomenal. I am in love with the doors and trapdoors and just the overall color to it, and I'm extremely hyped to be able to contrast it with Deep Slate. The new mosses I can see working very nicely for building dirt or gravel paths, or using them to stylize ruins of fallen structures. The hanging moss would also be perfect for cave decorations, and I'm honestly a little shocked Mojang hasn't added anything of the sorts to normal caves already. The Creaking, I think, is an incredible addition to the game, and I'm honestly a huge fan of them adding more and more drastically unique mobs to the game, especially looking at and comparing it to the other recent additions like the Warden, Sniffers, and the Breeze. Its appearance, behavior, and overall setting of where you can find it feel completely unique and make it stand out from anything else you see in the game. Even the way you have to go about killing it and not dying to it, it just makes it such an immersive experience when you end up coming across it. If I had to change anything about it, I'd say to make it more of a threat, if anything. Make it a heavier hitter, sending a clear message that you shouldn't be here after sunset. Make it bigger, taller, and lankier, more proportional to the blocks of wood surrounding you. Imagine walking through these eerie woods as the sun sets, and suddenly you start seeing these glowing eyes, not in front of you, but above you, seemingly in the trees, until you realize it is the trees. As a trade-off for it being more lethal, let's say it could be killed. Of course, to actually kill it, you'd still have to break the Creaking heart, but if you hit it enough with, say, exclusively an axe, it could simmer into the ground, sort of like how the Warden burrows. However, it would immediately respawn somewhere behind you, giving you an initial sense of security until it strikes you yet again, leading you to have to find the source of its life. Also, if placing down a collected Creaking heart can resummon this creature, maybe it would be a cool feature if viewing it through tinted glass wouldn't hinder its ability to move, similar to not aggravating an Enderman when viewing it through glass. As a conclusionary thought and pointing towards the next section of the video, I'd say so far this update seems pretty decent. I like the idea of knowing I have a new biome to explore with a new threat to conquer. Now, upon originally writing this script, I realized that Mojang announced that the future of Minecraft's progression is shifting, and from now on, Minecraft updates are now drops. The 1.22 update is going to be a content drop, as opposed to an official update. But why is this the case? How did it get to this point? And how does the community play into any of this? Scratch that, hold up. The plan was to end this part here, but they've released a snapshot allowing you to play with the new biome, mob, and blocks right now. As I hoped, the new Whitewood set works fantastically with Deep Slate, and using the bark as an accent color gives your black and white build a bit of a warm touch to it. I'm excited to see what the community makes and mixes these blocks with, since there are so many more talented builders out there than me. The forest is also much more creepy than I initially expected, and it's actually quite terrifying roaming them at night. With the amount of mobs that chase you, combined with the amount of creakings that feel like they pop in and out of existence, you're always on your toes in this forest when the sun goes down. Additionally, the atmosphere is unlike any other biome in the overworld too, and I'm glad they've taken similar features used in nether biomes and brought them to this forest. As you enter the forest, the sky itself dims to an equally pale color as the flora around you, really adding on to the dense woods feel. Not only that, but extra ambience has been added to the biome as well. As you roam around, day or night, there's constant creaking of wood and snapping of branches, so even if you run to this forest in the daytime, you never truly feel alone. Have a listen. As with every new update, I'm super excited to see what else they add to this drop, and I wonder what other functions they plan to give the Creaking Heart. And like I said, the snapshot is out right now, so go try this for yourself. It's with no doubt that the reputation of Minecraft's development has declined over the years, spawning online wars within its own fanbase with the now cancelled mob votes, every new update feeling like it adds less and less, and having the community deem them Caves and Cliffs Part 3, 4, and 5, and spawning waves of memes portraying what it feels like the developers do during the work week, and with the game being the #1 most purchased game in the world, it would only feel appropriate that each new addition to the game accurately reflects that. To start this next section off, I'm going to take you all back to school for a brief moment here, so here we go. I'm pretty sure we're pretty familiar with scatterplots, a graph designed to take two subjects and determine the relationship between the two of them. When we have ourselves a select handful of data points, we can come to one of three conclusions: a positive relationship or a negative relationship, which can be displayed by a line of best fit, or no relationship, where the points are so scattered that there is no way to draw an accurate line through all the data. One of the other notable terms when looking at a scatter plot are these points called outliers. Points that fall significantly farther above or below the rest of the points, skewing the line of best fit. Now, our next question is how scatter plots relate to the Minecraft update timeline. If we were to take some of the most significant and recent updates, starting from the 1.13, the update Aquatic, still have no idea why it's worded that way and not the Aquatic update, but sure, I guess. Best part about art is everyone's unique way to make and interpret it, and ending with the 1.21 Tricky Trials update, we've got a pretty good batch of updates to work with here. 2018's Update Aquatic, 2019's Village and Pillage, 2019's Buzzy Bees, 2020's Nether Update, 2021's Caves and Cliffs Part 1, 2021's Caves and Cliffs Part 2, 2022's The Wild Update, 2023's Trails and Tales, 2024's Armored Paws, and 2024's Tricky Trials. Now, we want to plot them on a graph using two subjects that help us map out the direction of updates. For this, our x-axis will obviously be labeled as updates, and for our y-axis, we'll label it as amount of stuff. Now, we're going to plot these points in accordance with the official Hadyen standards, which if you read under section 888, you'll see that you hereby agree with anything I say and deem it as accurate as I say, which is very accurate. No, but in reality, these points are obviously up for debate, as lumping in mobs, blocks, items, utilities, concepts, challenges, etc., and then having to compare multiple lumps of stuff by their amount of stuff just becomes extremely broad. Next, we need to identify our outliers and adjust our findings for the accurate line of best fit. Of course, the Buzzy Bees update can be ditched. The Armored Paws update was actually more of our first taste of a content drop, considering how the release version was just 1.20.5. And lastly, I'd like to argue that the Nether update can qualify as a significantly higher point on our graph. I mean, look at it. It's arguably the best update Minecraft released, completely overhauling the dimension. New blocks, biomes, items, mobs, utilities, and structures were introduced. It went above and beyond compared to all the other overhauls. It's basically taking one of the earliest versions of Minecraft and then adding in literally everything we have now all in one update. Just an eighth of the scale, of course. After we remove these outliers and heavily generalize the updates based on their amount of stuff, we can come out with something a little like this. Our line of best fit can arguably be on the relative decline, showing how each update adds a little bit less. Again, all of these points can be debated as to how much stuff is in each update, but even so, the average amount of stuff isn't decreasing drastically. So why is it that the community's reaction to each recent update has been so negative? Remember how I mentioned that the Nether update was an outlier due to it being significantly larger than the rest of them? Well, I like to think that the downfall starts here, and not caves and cliffs. Like I said, the Nether update was essentially like adding a new dimension, considering how massive the overhaul was. As we should know, not every update is able to push out new dimension levels of content, but alas, with how great the success of the Nether overhaul was after the two other incredible overhauls, this is what I believe set the community's expectations for following updates through the roof. The next update being the Caves and Cliffs update, an overworld overhaul that the community had long been asking for. Not only did this update promise all these new items, ores, and mobs, but it promised to overhaul the entire world generation. The updates kept getting better and better, and this had the potential to really revolutionize the entire game. But, of course, the pandemic struck, which made work extremely difficult for Mojang. And on top of that, the world generation was significantly more challenging than Mojang even expected. And unfortunately, as more time passed, the Caves and Cliffs update became more and more watered down. The update was split into two parts. Blocks and items felt like they had such limited uses, customization, and craftability. Only 2 cave biomes ended up being added. Also, does anyone else remember when they teased the mesh caves? I thought it was a fever dream because it was mentioned once and then was never brought up again. The mob vote was, of course, as controversial as it gets, and when the glow squid was added, it was extremely underwhelming. Very few uses with its drop, and it still doesn't even glow to this day. As someone who voted for it, no, not because Dream was telling everybody to vote for it at the time. I sincerely apologize because even I was disappointed with what I voted for. Yet, as we all know, what was originally showcased didn't all make the cut for the Caves and Cliffs update, which, at the very least, gave Mojang more time to improve those features. And also, I'm still devastated to this day that several of these lush cave plants aren't renewable and have super limited functionality. Next up, the Wild update finally introduced the third cave biome, the Deep Dark, as well as the Mangrove Forest, mud blocks, ancient cities, the Warden, Frog, and the Allay. After the disaster that was the Caves and Cliffs update, it was time for Mojang to take a good step forward. The ancient city was such an upgrade from what was originally showcased in the Caves and Cliffs trailer that I don't know if there's anything else in the entire game that's received such a glow up. Additionally, with the absolute monster of a portal frame at the center of the city, this obviously drove the hype to the stars, as it was Mojang's first sign of their future plans for a new dimension. Unfortunately, there's still a multitude of reasons as to why this was labeled as Minecraft 1.19 the mild update. For starters, some of the concept art showcased for this update involved some updated birch forests, with new foliage, upgraded atmosphere, and just overall better quality of life. This feature was cancelled, scrapped and tossed, which, in Mojang's defense, it was just concept art that portrayed these new birch forests, and it was never a guarantee that they would be added. However, this is still one of the few, if not the only instance where a brilliant new feature was announced and then full-on scrapped for the foreseeable future, as opposed to the outvoted features in previous mob and biome votes that will eventually be added. Speaking of scrapped ideas, lest we not forget about our favorite pair of animated pixels, the Fireflies, which we can all survive without these 2D floating and blinking creatures. But they would be such an absolutely beautiful addition to the atmosphere of really any plains or forest biome. Not only that, but it can't be such a difficult concept to code and allow players to right-click them with a glass bottle to obtain a new twinkly light source, a jar of fireflies. And my biggest gripe with it, because yes, I'm still going to beat another dead horse because I love this game and would love to officially see some of these ideas be added, but it's the fact that they removed them due to them being toxic to frogs, leaving them to make the frogs eat something else. So what did they go with? Cubes of molten rock. We go from a toxic bug as a frog food to actual lava being an ample substitute for frog consumption. Round of applause, everybody. Ugh. Lastly, the exclusive loot from the ancient city is just subpar. I can't even lie. The recovery compass is okay. I mean, I'm assuming most people that even get their hands on it are already in a position where they don't die often at all, or have a good familiarity with their world that they sort of know where they died. Also, it's just completely useless for anybody playing in hardcore difficulty. The disc comes in fragments, which may be some lore thing, but okay, I guess. Echo shards craft the recovery compass, but literally serve zero other purpose. The armor trims you can get there are pretty cool, especially the silence trim, but do keep in mind that those came out in the following update, Trails and Tales. So, in all honesty, the exclusive loot from this place isn't really extravagant. Oh yeah, and goat horns were also finally added, which I don't think anyone knows, but in some snapshots, there used to be many different sounds for goat horns, and each individual horn would play 3 different sounds depending on how high or low you were looking. And on top of that, you could craft each of those goat horns into copper horns, which then played another batch of unique 3 sounds for each horn. But many of the original horns and all of the copper horns were removed due to them not lining up with the developer's views, which is absurdly unfortunate because if the goat horns, let alone the goat itself, had any chance of having any sort of relevance in the game, the vast selection of new and unique horns and sounds were it, and like 75% of it was all dumped. Imagine Mojang making a way for these horns to be redstone compatible, allowing you to have them play these sounds remotely by redstone activation. In the end, this update kind of sat with players as an update that promised a lot, but threw out more than it gave. The Trails and Tales update I don't believe was too bad. Archaeology was finally added, and like the ancient cities, it was well defined and polished, even updating older structures to fit in with the archaeology theme and overall decorative theme that 1.20 brought. We got 2 new wood sets, the bamboo batch and the cherry wood from the luscious new cherry grove biome, new hanging signs for every wood set, decorative pots and very interactable chiseled bookshelves, all of the smithing plates, which are fantastic, and making the netherite set more difficult to obtain, camels, and the sniffer. Trail ruins were also an added structure to further improve the concept of archaeology, and the community was very concerned with how they looked. But again, these are clearly very old ruins, and are also buried deep in the ground, so it's not like we have the misfortune 3 of stumbling upon these heinous eyesores in the open. The Sniffer is a super cool and unique mob, and is also the key to our 2 new plants. So a pretty solid update from Mojang after they learned from previous mistakes and the misconceptions. My only disappointment is how we only received 2 new plants from the Sniffer, especially when leaks displayed a potential 3rd that could be grown and placed on walls. Of course, that was a leak and was never officially from Mojang. And adding too many seeds for the Sniffer to dig up would make it more difficult to obtain the torchflower seeds needed to breed them. But still, just 2? Unless you want to count the cherry blossoms from the cherry grove, but come on, let's get some crazy plants from it. Go all out. Why are we scared of more decorative nature things? The Tricky Trials update was solid. I actually don't think I have any complaints with this one. It's super fun, super engaging, new unique spawners with their own built-in hard mode, a new skeleton variant, and the breeze. Additionally, the new mace was truly Mojang just saying f it and making it such an insanely beefy weapon off the get-go. And when people questioned if it was overpowered, they doubled down and again said f it and gave it all these new enchantments. Speaking of which, I do have one suggestion rather than a complaint. Let me enchant my mace with looting 3, Mojang. Why can this thing one-shot zombies and spiders with density, but I can willingly choose to enchant it with smite or bane of arthropods? Like, come on. And of course, the brand new trial chambers themselves are just super aesthetically incredible, and I legit get excited every time I find one while strip mining. I don't really recall as much negativity with this update, because it was just really good. And anyone complaining about, wow, no new wood type, we got the new tough set with this update. A new stone edition, like all the stairs and slabs added in the Village and Pillage update. In summary, the incredible hype after the Nether update, immediately followed by an absolute haven of new content showcased for the following Caves and Cliffs update, leading into a bunch of updates that build off of it and slowly work those previously mentioned features into the game, whilst also having yearly conflicts in every mob vote before each update, it all just tanked the community's liking towards the way Minecraft was updated. With all of this, and with the arguable decline of content per update, Mojang stated that they're now shifting to a new format of adding content, describing them as drops. With what feels like each update adding less and less, I think this new system is going to be good for both ends. These drops are a fresh start to a new progression of the game, and it should be fair to Mojang that we understand that these drops are going to be relatively smaller than our older average updates. Thus, I think the negative reactions stemming from the community about the 1.22 Bundles of Bravery update are over-exaggerated. Of course, it's going to take some getting used to, but I think it will quickly grow on people. At the same time, I still think there's some room for improvement with the drop. The Pale Garden isn't exactly a garden, just an incredibly dense forest. Still though, the white wood is phenomenal, and I hope that they announce some new uses for the Creaking Heart soon. Maybe it could be the new source to create a new golem or something. It would be interesting too if we got some more foliage in this biome to make it more gardeny, instead of just new recolored moss. Although the hanging moss and moss carpet creeping up the sides of blocks is super cool. In addition, maybe we could add a couple new flowers that could be crafted into gray or light gray dye. Maybe the chance for flowering hanging moss to spawn, essentially mimicking the behavior of the glowberry vines. Or perhaps a new twisted tall grass block, unique to this biome, that can be harvested and changing colors depending on what biome it's placed in as well. To wrap this video up, I want to again restate that I think we should come to a level understanding of Mojang's new direction. Anyone who watched this video to this point, I'm sure, is as passionate about this game as I am, and the best way that we can help improve the quality of the game is to get a good grasp as to where Mojang themselves stand with the development of their own game. This new system is going to allow us to receive content more frequently. With Mojang constantly listening to feedback, we're going to feel heard and more engaged than before. Curse those wretched mob votes. A new biome, woodset, mob, and finally wrapping up what the Caves and Cliffs update announced I think is a good drop to start out with. Which is also important to note that this is just the start of the drop. We don't know what else they're going to add by the time that they actually release this drop. And by the looks of it, the drop could be coming out around the holiday season. So that's plenty of time for them to add more before it ends up getting released. At the same time, it's important to recognize that Minecraft is, again, the biggest game in the world. There are always going to be a handful of people who fall on any point of the satisfied scale. Like a scatterplot, it's important to toss out any outliers, ignoring those who completely glaze everything Mojang does no matter what, whilst also ignoring those who are hating just to hate. Of course, when new things are announced, it's okay to feel underwhelmed, and it's okay to feel extremely excited. Not every update is going to cater to the entire community, but each update is sure to add something new and exciting for each and every player. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it. I can't say with confidence that I'll be publishing video essays super often, as it's a little difficult to find topics that really mean enough to me to write an entire script for. But seeing the positivity from the last one, I'll for sure be working on branching out and trying to cover subjects that are good conversation starters. Covering too much drama feels too much like petty gossip to me, and I prefer talking about things where I can have good conversations with people who have differing views. Regardless, the majority of my videos will still probably be gaming, as they're still super fun to me and all my friends, but despite that, I still hope to see you again in a future video. Thank you again, and I love you all.